UCLA takes down USC, Juju Watkins surpasses Caitlin Clark for a new record, Hailey Van Lith gets sweet revenge, and so much more. You guys, here are all your women's college basketball updates. What's up, you guys? I'm Rachel DeMita and welcome to the Courtside Club. Today is going to be another update video because we are in the thick of it. March Madness is here. There is so much going on in women's college hoops, so I'm going to update you guys on all of it. So let's jump right in. I feel like the biggest game yesterday was the UCLA versus USC for the Big Ten championship. UCLA got sweet revenge on USC. You guys, this is a rivalry that is probably one of the biggest rivalries right now in women's college basketball. These two teams do not like each other. And I actually remember, I believe it was last week, there was this video going around social media where one of the girls from USC was in their locker room and they were filming a TikTok or something. And you can hear Juju in the back saying something along the lines of, "Man, I just really hate UCLA." And I believe that this was after they had just once again beaten UCLA. So these two teams, they do not like each other. This was a huge win for UCLA. They won the Big Ten championship. And honestly, one of my favorite moments from it, it was so funny. Lauren Betts, she had a huge game. And right as they won and the buzzer went off, she's running over like to her bench. And she's initially pointing to her bench. And then she turns and points to the USC bench. This is what sports are. This is what sports are made of. I love this rivalry here. It will be cool to see if these two teams match up once again in the Final Four. Now, in that game, I don't think Juju played the best game of her career, but she did have a great stat line. She put up 29 points. And with that game last night, she actually passes Caitlin Clark for the most points scored through a women's college basketball player's first 2 seasons. Now, when I initially saw that this record had been broken, I saw it from this tweet right here. So this is from Sporting News, which is some sort of media outlet. And this was the graphic that they chose to put up. It's obviously Juju here in full color and Caitlin's kind of in shadow, which makes you think that Juju had broken the record, right? Well, that's not the full picture because Kelsey Mitchell actually still holds this record. And I actually liked the way that NCAA March Madness, the graphic that they chose to put up to announce Juju's record. So they said Juju has moved up to have the second most points scored through a D1 women's basketball player's first 2 seasons. What an accomplishment. I love this here because the focus is on Juju. We have 3 photos of Juju here, and then next to her it shows number 1, Kelsey Mitchell with 1,762 points, number 2, Juju Watkins with 1,684 points, and number 3, Caitlin Clark with 1,662 points. Now, just from this, unfortunately, but we knew it was going to happen, this just stirred up a bunch of dialogue online from fans from both parties and also haters from both parties. We have seen the narratives for the entire season. It started out with Paige Bueckers at the beginning of the season where people in the media, a lot of people at some of these big networks were saying that Paige Bueckers was the Caitlin Clark before Caitlin Clark. And then when it got to the second half of the season and Juju has been taking over, she's had a phenomenal second half of her sophomore season. She probably will win the Wooden Player of the Year award. She has been playing great. It turns to, oh, Juju is going to pass Caitlin Clark's scoring record. And that has been the conversation. Anytime Juju has a great game, people on one side are saying, oh, Juju's so much better than Caitlin. Look, she's actually the Michael Jordan of women's basketball. It's not Caitlin. And then people on the other side, anytime they see Juju have a good game, they want to pull up anytime Caitlin has had a great game. It has gotten absurd and I'm so sick of it because I don't think any of it is productive to any of these players. We have players like Paige Bueckers and Juju Watkins who are making names for themselves. I don't want their name, their legacy, and I don't think they want it either to just be based on comparisons to another player. And I think the reason that it upsets me about some of these comparisons, because what we do in sports media, we compare players all the time. Right? There's always healthy debates about what player's better, talking about players' skill sets, this and that. This is a whole different beast that is happening in the media and on social media between these two college players and Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark had a legendary run in her college career. She is now in the WNBA. Let her be in the WNBA and let these women build their college careers while they are still in college. When Juju does something great, let's focus on Juju and let's talk about the great things that she's done instead of just running to ESPN and saying, oh, well, she's not getting the same coverage as Caitlin Clark. Let's talk about Juju as she's an individual person that she is. And the funny thing also about all of this is Paige Bueckers, Juju Watkins, and Caitlin Clark have all three completely different styles of games. Completely. Wouldn't it be fun to break down the style of play for each of these players? When we talk about Caitlin Clark, obviously the thing that made her name in college was her long-range three-point shooting because we had not seen that before. You had to pick her up at half court or else she would shoot from half court. That is what made Caitlin Clark Caitlin Clark. And then as she developed, and she had a ton of assists in college as well, as she developed in the WNBA, we saw her passing game, we saw other things, her playmaking ability and beyond. When I look at a player like Juju Watkins, she has one of the smoothest games that I have ever seen in the women's game. Her game, and I've said it before, reminds me of like a Kobe style of game. It's very smooth. She has the mid-range. She can score on 3 levels. And she also is a good defender. She's in the right spots. She blocks shots. She's long. She's athletic. That's Juju's game. I wouldn't say that she's a sharpshooter from 3-point range. She doesn't do step backs. It's not Caitlin's game. It's very different. Even her ball handling, they both have great ball handling, but they're different. It's a different style. Now we move on to somebody like a Paige Bueckers, who I also think has a completely different style. And Paige Bueckers, among all of them, is probably the most efficient when it comes to scoring, when it comes to not having so many turnovers in the game, when it comes to protecting the ball. She is also a playmaker. Paige can also score on every level, but I think one thing with Paige, she's so shifty when she goes to the basket and she will get a bucket. Juju is better at drawing fouls. Caitlin is better than all of them from the 3-point range. I feel like that is a more productive discussion if we want to drag Caitlin back into the college mix, but I don't get it. And I feel like at this point, a lot of these comparisons are simply for people to try to replace Caitlin Clark as quick as they possibly can. Because unfortunately, there is still this weird mindset. I don't understand it. I think all of these players can be celebrated, and I don't understand why we can't just celebrate Caitlin Clark for all that she's done for women's basketball, all that she did in college. And it's the same thing. I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. I want to go over more things. But if we remember back to when Breanna Stewart was in college, she won 4 national titles back to back. 4. That's insane. She did that. That's hers. That's Breanna Stewart. That is not Caitlin Clark. That is not Juju. And that is not Paige. None of that. That's Breanna Stewart. When we talk about somebody like a Kelsey Plum, who was up there, I think she's 3 or 4 in the most points ever in NCAA history. Kelsey Plum had a killer college career. She is Kelsey Plum. She is the dog who is Kelsey Plum. That is her. That is her. We're not comparing her to a bunch of other people. When Sabrina Ionescu was in college, we weren't saying, oh, she's the next Kelsey Plum. She's the next Breanna Stewart. No, she's Sabrina. Her game is completely different. That's her. And so I'm just annoyed with this. I don't mind player comparisons. I feel like I would be really hypocritical because that is something that sports media do. But when you do player comparisons with an agenda, that is different. And it's very obvious with a lot of the media personalities and people on social media. They have agendas behind the reasons that they are comparing certain players. And I wish that us as fans, us as media, would just appreciate these players for who they are. And it would be way more productive to the basketball conversation if we did that. End rant. That's all I've got. Now let's talk about these rankings because of that game, UCLA is back at number 1. So the AP Top 25, we have UCLA number 1, South Carolina number 2, Yukon number 3, USC number 4, Texas 5, TCU 6, Duke 7, Notre Dame 8. Now Notre Dame was a team that I've had my eyes on since the beginning of the season. You guys know we had Hannah Hidalgo on the show. I'm a fan of this team. I'm a fan of the players on this team. I think that they are stacked. When they are clicking, and they have had a rough end to the season. They have lost 3 of their last 5 games, including the game for the ACC championship. They lost to Duke. Now, Duke really impressed me. Duke is a young team. They have Coach Kara Lawson, which, by the way, I watched Kara Lawson so much when I was growing up. I'm a huge fan of hers. She went to Tennessee. Love her, and I love what she's doing for that program. The Duke girls, when they're on the court, like one thing I have to say about them, it looks like they're having fun. They do not have any standout superstars at the moment. They don't have players who are dropping dropping 30, 40 points a game. They play as a team, they play really quick, and they focus on defense. And that is one thing I have never seen Notre Dame have so much trouble scoring like I did in the game against Duke. And that's such a rare thing when you have players like Hannah Hidalgo, which she had a big game against Duke, but Olivia Miles struggled a bit, Sonia Citron struggled a bit. And those are 3 players that I think that they are going to be drafted high in the WNBA. And so congrats to Duke. They did a great job there, and they moved up 4 spots in these rankings. Another team I want to talk about is South Carolina. You can never doubt Dawn Staley. South Carolina is just a great program, and they showed in their SEC championship, they handed Texas the L. Texas could not keep up. And Texas actually, if you remember in the last ranking, they were number 1, and they struggled against LSU, who didn't have Anissa Morrow and who didn't have Flage, and those are 2 of their biggest players. They struggled against them, and they really struggled against South Carolina as well. It was a huge blowout game. South Carolina is somebody they could repeat. And I know that we haven't talked about them that much lately because I feel like all eyes have kind of been on individual players. When we talk about Lauren Betts from UCLA or Juju Watkins from USC or Hailey Van Lith at TCU, we're going to get to her, or Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame. We've talked about all of these individual stars, but South Carolina is also a system, and they get the job done. They are also a team and a system who is no stranger to the NCAA tournament, so I could see them making a really deep run. It's going to be really hard to beat South Carolina in this tournament. So let's talk about Hailey Van Lith for a second. She has had an interesting ride in college. She played at Louisville, she played at LSU, and then she decided to come back for her 5th year and go to TCU. And people were wondering how she was going to play this season. Well, she has proved all of her haters wrong. She's had an incredible run this season. I think her WNBA draft stock is going up. I remember earlier on in the year when she had her first ever triple-double and she was in tears in the locker room. And from that video in itself, you just know that feeling as a player when you feel like you're just not playing as yourself. Maybe from the outside, it looks like you're playing well, but you know when you're playing as yourself. And it was like that game where all the emotions came in because it clicked for her and she felt like her. And it seems like she's having a lot of fun. This TCU team is doing so well. And I want to play for you guys a little clip of what she had to say after that Big 12 championship game. They did win the Big 12 championship. And this is after they were last in the Big 12 last year.
Honestly, team achievements are it's such a flex to say that your team is good. Like, anybody can go out and have average 20 a game and play on a bad team and never get to postseason. To say that your team, like, kicks people's butts, like, that's the ultimate flex. So, like, anytime my team, like, we do something, like, that's the best feeling. But at the end of the day, I think things have started coming to me more, and I've been actually able to, really get over the hurdle of certain things because I've stopped living for it. Like, my self-worth isn't teetering on whether I win, Big 12 Player of the Year or not. So, yeah, I think I'm proud of myself for that growth as a human. But at the end of the day, anything that we win as a team, like, that's the ultimate flex to me.
I love the fact that she said her self-worth isn't teetering on the fact of if she wins Big 12 Player of the Year award or not. And she actually did. She did win Big 12 Player of the Year. I think this is another team in TCU that people might have been sleeping on, but they shouldn't. This NCAA tournament for the women's, I'm telling you guys, it's going to be one of the wildest that we've seen. And I know the last 2 years are very hard to live up to with Iowa's runs, with the Iowa LSU rivalry, with South Carolina going undefeated. This is going to be a really fun one. I will be tapped in. I'm going to be tapped in. Lastly, I want to talk about Yukon. They are playing in their Big East Championship tonight, but Sarah Strong and Paige Beckers are figuring it out. This Yukon team, I felt like they were going through some growing pains in the first half of the season, but them, like South Carolina, are peaking at the right time. They are coming together and they seem tournament ready. Sarah Strong, in her last game, she's just a freshman. She had 20 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and 3 steals. She is really going to be a problem for Yukon. And Paige Bueckers, in her last game, she had 23 points. She was 10 for 17 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and she also had 6 assists. Now, we know that Paige is really hungry for that championship, and that was something a lot of people were saying. This is the season for Paige to win a championship. It's championship or bust for her. She gets the championship, and then she's number 1 in the draft. That has been the narrative, but I will say I have to give props where props are due. Yukon is closer than ever, in my eyes, to gelling as a team and being ready for that tournament. They're looking really good right now, so we will just have to see. With that, you guys, you let me know in the comments below who you will be rooting for in this tournament. And of course, thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it. Click that little subscribe button because we upload new videos every single week. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Uyana.